Hello, my name is Noah and this is my very first video on YouTube. I wanted to start with my spring knitting plans covering roughly April through June, and I'm going to be sharing 11 different patterns, about half accessories, half garments, and one sort of other slash blanket pattern. I'm from the Bay Area, so the weather year-round here is very temperate. It's 60 to 70, like 85% of days. So I can really wear hand knits all year if I really felt like it, except for maybe the hottest part of July. So the stuff that I'm saying that I'm gonna knit is probably not applicable to every person, especially if you live on the East Coast, live in the South, or just anywhere else. But yeah, so the first pattern I have to share is actually not a knitting pattern, but a Tunisian crochet pattern. And it's called the Entrelac and Key Scarf by Tony of TL Yarn Crafts. I've been a fan of her work for a very long time. She helped teach me how to crochet about 5 years ago when I was first getting into it, and I just love her content. I've always wanted to knit one of her patterns, or I guess crochet one of her patterns. I recently took a class on Tunisian crochet at one of my local yarn stores, and we learned Entrelac. For those unfamiliar, Entrelac exists both in knitting and in Tunisian crochet, where you create blocks that stack on top of each other with the direction, kind of creating interlocking blocks. I think it actually means like interlocking in French. So that scarf by her is one thing I'm really looking forward to working on. The original pattern is a DK weight pattern that is done with a 5.5 and a 6mm hook. Tunisian crochet generally creates very thick fabric, so you usually upsize at least 1 or 2 sizes from the recommended for your yarn. Because it's a scarf, the gauge isn't super important, so I actually decided to use some leftover Plymouth Superwash that I have. And the 3 colors I am using are, I think, Turquoise, Glow, like hot pink, and I think it's just called neon green. So, but because I'm using worsted and not DK, I am using a 6.5mm hook, and I think I have a 7mm one I will use for the border, but I cannot find it for the life of me, so I might need to upsize or just crochet pretty loose around the edge. The next accessory I'm going to be knitting, I'm actually going to be knitting twice. This is the Snowflake hat by Meredith Watcher. And so Lang released a yarn called Snowflake, and I saw it at multiple stores when I did the Bay Area yarn crawl 2 weeks ago. Lang Snowflake I saw at both Pop of Color Yarns in Morgan Hill and at Dharma Trading Co. in San Rafael. So I ended up picking up this pink color and this gray one separately. And I found, so the Snowflake hat is specifically designed to use this yarn to create a beanie. So you can see that there's all these little flakes within the ball because it's designed basically like a planned pooling sort of yarn, or if you've seen self-striping socks, very similar to that. And I just thought it was so pretty, so I'm going to be knitting matching beanies for me and my girlfriend. Beanies are surprisingly a practical item for everyday wear where we live, so excited about that. Then the next accessory I want to talk about is the Versailles scarf by Juliette Williams. I saw this scarf actually on Knit's podcast. She was one of the test knitters, actually. She didn't just knit one, but I've really been on a scarf kick recently. But what I like so much about this scarf is the fact that it is sideways constructed. So it, instead of being like, 20 stitch rows over and over and over again, it's like, 200 stitch rows, and then you have a full scarf. I've always wanted to knit a scarf that's constructed like that, because I find turning my work all the time really slows me down. But the Versailles scarf is a fingering weight scarf done on US 5 or 3.75mm needles. The way I was thinking about constructing this scarf was actually, instead of using like about half a skein of fingering weight. I was thinking about using 2 minis. I got some really cool ones that are like super variegated, really colorful, and sort of just unsure of what else I would do with them. And I have a couple solids, so I think doing like a half variegated, half like solid would look really cool. Okay, the last accessory I wanted to talk about is the Cherish scarf by Nina Talbot. And the Cherish scarf is it's a really unique style scarf that I don't usually see. I've seen a couple of the sort of like other interlocking, like where you create basically a heart shape and then a pocket and you put one heart shape through the other pocket. Bad way to describe it, but that's the only way I can really think too. I've seen that with a handful of things, but this one, it's interesting to me because it actually can go like kind of all around your shoulders, which gives it enough length to be wrapped twice. I think it is just absolutely gorgeous. And so it's a DK weight knit using 4.5 and 5mm needles. The yarn I'm using for is actually yarn I got several months ago. I got back when I was in LA for the SoCal Fiber Fest. So there's a store down there called The Knitting Tree, and they had a special color come out called Under the Tree, which was from Porter Wool Co. It was their Merino DK. It was just the most beautiful yarn I had ever seen. And I stared at it and I really was like, am I really gonna spend $30 on a single skein? Because usually that's not really my speed, but it spoke to me because it's like green and looks like there's like flowers almost on it. And I actually saw the sample was knit in a Sophie scarf. I did not know it was the Sophie scarf at the time. And I was like, I'll just make this. This is a perfect thing. So I actually was going to knit the Sophie scarf by Petite Knit for those unaware. But I looked at the yardage and it wouldn't use up the full ball because the ball is actually 115 grams. So it's like a little bit like more than one single DK ball. So I decided to do the Cherish scarf instead because it will actually use up one full ball and I won't be left with just kind of a half that I don't know what to do with. Yeah, and so those are all of the accessories that I wanted to talk about. Now I'm going to move on to garments. So the garments that I'm going to be knitting this spring are, I have 2 tees, I think 2 sweaters and 2 cardigans. So I guess I'll start with the tees. So the first tee I'm going to do is the Rizzo tee by Claire Jackson of Perfectly Knotted. And also while I was at the Knitting Tree, I got the Cascade 220 Superwash Wave. This one is, I don't think they have actual color names. It just says color number 120, dye lot number 1. And I think it's just such a fun spring color combination. And what I like about the Rizzo tee is actually sometimes a pattern speaks to me and I just am like, I guess this is what I'm knitting. Sometimes I get an idea for something and I look for a pattern based upon what I want. Because when I saw it, what I wanted to make was like a very like tight negative ease raglan, and this is perfect for it because it's I think it's 1 by 1 rib all around. But what I'm doing to modify it a little bit is it has a folded collar at the top. I've made that I'm gonna make it a picot edge instead to add a little bit of flair, and also doing the collar along with the raglans in this like bright raspberry color of Lion Brand's 24/7 cotton. I think adding in the contrast on the raglans is just going to look gorgeous. The idea of doing basically micro intarsia in the round is a little bit daunting, but I am sure I'll figure out a way to just make it work. Will it be the most professionally done thing ever? Probably not. But will it look cool? Absolutely. So I'm really excited to do that. That is worked up on 5mm needles. The other tee I'm going to be knitting this spring is Swirly by Caledonia Dreaming. This is a DK weight knit on 4mm needles. What I like about this is that it's a continuous color work chart. So the swirl design is not like, it's not a repeatable pattern. You always have to be looking at the chart, which I think makes it just look so unique and like makes it, I guess elevated is the word I would use. I also just really enjoy color work. I think it'll be a really fun thing to knit. And I'm going to be knitting it in Brazilian Merino Sweet by Circular. This is the gray color that I'm going to be using for the contrast, and then this is the green color, which I think is called Juniper. So I actually won the gray at a raffle giveaway at Piedmont Yarn and Apparel, and also part of the Bay Area Yarn Crawl. There was many things won and many things purchased during such an event, but I just thought this would be really cool for that. And then I ordered 2 of these to go with it because I didn't really have any other DK on hand that I thought would work super well. So then the first pullover that I'll be knitting this spring is the Fern Pullover by Joan Ho. I actually got a copy of her book probably 6 or 7 months ago, and I love all of the patterns in this so much. There's like 7 that I really want to knit, and there's only 15 patterns in the entire book. But yes, the Fern Pullover is the one on the cover. I'll show it again. And so it is a solid cable, like all over cable design. But I wanted to make my life a little bit more difficult. So the sweater is worked bottom up in the round, split for sleeves, whole thing. I actually decided that I wanted to knit it in 3 colors with color changing. So I'm actually working it flat for each piece and then doing intarsia with cables. I don't think it's going to be the worst experience, especially considering this is bulky weight, and I believe it is knit up on 6.5mm needles. The yarn I like, it's super soft. I think it'll be pretty easy to cable without a cable needle, which I have a lot of practice with. And this yarn is Ella Rae's Cozy Alpaca Chunky, which is beyond soft. Like, I normally don't touch yarn and go, wow, that's really, really soft. And, you know, affordable enough for a sweater quantity. But this is actually, it's machine washable, and it is, I think, 70% acrylic and 30% alpaca. You would not be able to tell that this is acrylic. Like, I even was like, got comments from like when I was checking out to buy it. Even like the girl behind the counter was like, I also cannot believe this has so much acrylic in it. And like she guessed like it was like 40%, and she was like, oh my god, 70. So honestly, highly recommend. So then the next pullover I'm going to be doing is probably the most simple out of all of my cast-ons. It is the Eris raglan from Pom Pom's Ready Set Raglan book. I got a copy of this since they are unfortunately going out of business, right? Of course, as I discover Pom Pom and how great all their designs are. But they did have half off on a bunch of their issues, so I got a couple of those that way. This is their like stocking stitch, very plain raglan, but it shows like there's a couple of variations. So one of which you can see there's this like boucle one and this marled one. So I wanted to combine those two because at the SoCal Fiber Fest, I actually got this ginormous ball of mod yarns, like I think Loopy de Loop, and I got it for $20 because it has a little bit of pink on it that it's not supposed to have, because I've seen this in stores before. I got it from Anzula, and it's boucle, and I think it's 800 meters. I don't know how many yards it actually is, but I wanted to hold that with the Malabrigo sock, which is this. I think this one is just so pretty, and I think that all the little variegation will look really cool with the boucle. And this is in the color Myths 344. So I have 2 skeins of this and just the one, and I'm going to basically just knit the raglan until I run out of yarn. So I don't know exactly how long it's going to end up being, but I am really, really, really excited to cast it on. So, and then now I just have two more cardigans to share. The first cardigan is one that a lot of you've probably heard of cardigan number 6 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It is a bulky weight knit that is done with 3 strands of lace held together. This actually wasn't something that was really on my to knit list from seeing anyone talk about. It It was actually, I saw in a local yarn store, they had a sample of hers knit up in the Isager EcoSoft, and it was in their gray color. And I just saw it and I was just like, that is beautiful. I just want to knit that. And the Isager EcoSoft, I think is technically like, it's like a weight 4, but it's pretty fuzzy. So I think it'll mimic the gauge pretty well, considering they had a whole sample knit up in it. And I'm not really worried about a cardigan being like completely wrong size, I guess. Especially this is just a lot more affordable than buying so much lace. But what's really cool about the EcoSoft is it's all undyed, and it is 56% alpaca and 44% organic cotton. So you can see that there is both like white and brown in this. This is the, I think this has the color on it. It is color E8S. There's, I think, only about 6 colors in total. It's like white, ivory, tan, gray, brown, gray, and brown. And I'm normally not a very neutral person. I was thinking about doing it in the gray, but my natural hair color is actually very close to this brown. So I think it'll actually look really nice with my skin, and it'll be a nice outer layer, because I'm growing a little bit more fond of neutrals, just not especially fond. And the last cardigan that I want to talk about is the night cardigan by can you touch my Mac again?
You are doing fantastically.
Really?
Yes.
Like, you're like having a good time.
Yes, I'm having a good time. You're very good at speaking about these things.
Actually need to pull the pattern in my book. The last cardigan I want to talk about is the Night Coat it's from Viking Knits by Lassie L. Matberg. I may be Scandinavian, but I apologize for the mispronunciation. So the night jacket looks like this, and I just think it is so cool. I've really been into also a lot more masculine knitting patterns. There's not that many of them, which is something I really appreciate about the Viking Knits book, is that it has so many like men's knitting patterns, because I find those are pretty hard to come by. But he also has a variation of it that is called the Queen Coatigan, so which is a lot longer. I am probably going to do a cross between the two and follow more of the measurements of, because it's also a bottom-up construction, but follow the measurements working up for like the women's version, but then for the actual like width and like the shaping of the shoulders and the sleeves, I'm going to follow the men's pattern, because the women's pattern has these like braided cables on the sleeves, and I'm not really into those as much as I am into the regular look. So this is actually a DK weight knit, but the yarn that I like the most for it is actually an Aran weight. I frequently will kind of ignore gauge and just size down, and usually it's worked out absolutely just fine for me so far. Especially with something that's like not like negative ease or minimal stretch or something like that. So, but I wanted to use the Sirdar Jewelspun. This is in the color Northern Lights, or shade number 0839. It's 100% acrylic, but it is just like, I'm just like, look at all these fun colors, and I think it'll look so cool all knit up with the, I think they're 1x1 cables is how the crosses are made. But yeah, so I have 3 of these, and each ball is about 500 yards, and the smallest like men's size of the pattern I think uses like 1500 yards of DK weight yarn. So I'm thinking that I can probably knit like a men's medium and or knit like a men's small. I will gauge swatch for this, which usually I also don't do, which I know all the benefits to doing it. I just usually find myself hitting gauge for a lot of commercial patterns. For local or like smaller designers, they can have a lot more variation, I've noticed, as opposed to when you get patterns from somewhere like knit picks or yarn inspirations or just like a more corporate sort of thing. They try and keep it a little bit more consistent. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. And the very last pattern I want to talk about is kind of self-drafted, kind of not. One of my good friends actually commissioned me to make them what we've been lovingly calling the blanket. Bjork plus blanket, blanket. They're super, super, super into Bjork. I have been following the Lavender Chairs mandala patterns. She released, I think, 20 of them back in 2019 for a like blanket that just like all the squares are then just sewn together. I'm combining this with a pattern I saw a while ago where each square had kind of like a border between them. So I am making 15 by 15 inch squares. I am not a Bjork expert. I do enjoy some of her music from time to time, but I do not know a lot about Bjork. And even though this is something I have started and been working on and off for a few months, I'm including it in my spring knitting plans because of the fact that like each mandala square is so different from the last. I've done 6 of them so far and they are all like just so unique and require like enough creativity and like thinking about it. It's almost like doing a new cast on every single time. I'm doing each square with a 5.5mm hook, weight 4 yarn. So that will definitely be something I want to work on more this spring. Hopefully that is something I'll be able to finish in the spring because my friend has been waiting on this blanket for quite a while. And I applaud their patience. But so I'm just hoping I can finish it before the school year ends. And with that covers all 11 patterns that I am planning to knit for spring. I will probably have some just impulse cast-ons. I have plenty of other things that I have the yarn for, but I've not started for one reason or another. Some of those may end up being started. I will make a follow-up video in summer and we will reflect on how much of this I actually got done. And if you made it all the way to the end, I really appreciate that. It's very nerve-wracking just filming my first YouTube video and stuff. So just a little end, I want to say a little bit about myself. I am a very maximalist knitter and crocheter. I have been trying to watch more knitting podcasts and some crochet podcasts as well, but I frequently don't find that what they knit or crochet is really reflective of what I do. I am very much all color all the time. Like, you cannot give me enough variegation. And I'm not really into a lot of the super popular designers. I do have my favorite things knitwear pattern on here, but it's not really something I'm super into. And I like seeing people who talk about more unknown designers, people who do really unique knits. I love cables, love intarsia, just any form of color work. And I am hoping I can foster a space for more people like me who, you know, the ones who see just like that insane skein of yarn at their store and just like, I need that right now. Yeah, so any amount of interaction is appreciated. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.